Pope Leo has had his first visit, I believe, going into a foreign country. He started in Lebanon, after which he went to Turkey, as he said, and I'm not sure if he is already back. In Vatican or if he's still traveling. But yeah, he had his sort of first visit, and there were a few takeouts from there. Now, at least on social media, what you might see is, apparently when he was in Turkey, some Muslim, either priest or whatever, they tried to invite him to a mosque to pray, and he was like, no thank you. And everybody's like, wow, he said he's strong, he doesn't go pray in mosque. But when he was asked about sort of the Muslim population in Europe, he said, people exaggerate. You shouldn't be afraid of these people. You shouldn't be afraid of Islam. And I mean, we'll probably should watch the video. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Joining me today is James Valiant. And James, should we just go to the clip, since I think most of what we
Sure,
say
sure. I
would
mean,
be.
my only comment on that would be, of course, a religious person thinks we should be tolerant of religious fanatics who are violent. Violent religious fanaticism is no big deal. We exaggerate that. Coming from a religious authority, that should hardly be surprising. But I would expect better. I mean, if there was any tinge of rationality or liberalism, true liberalism to this guy, he would say, obviously, religious violence is wrong. And I acknowledge the religious violence in the world, particularly coming from Islam these days. In any case, yeah, let's listen to His Holiness.
And we already have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. So let's listen to the first clip. I cut out he was being asked a question, and he was basically being asked a question about sort of Muslim immigration in Europe and generally the way Europeans view Muslims.
All of the conversations that I had during my time both in Turkey and in Lebanon, including with many Muslims, were precisely concentrated on the topic of peace and respect for people of different religions. I know that, as a matter of fact, that has not always been the case. I know that in Europe there are many times fears that are present but oftentimes generated by people who are against immigration and trying to keep out people who may be from another country, another religion, another race.
So yeah, we'll cover this first part, and then there is a second part. So he talks about peace and respect for people and other religions. He says, there's a fear being present, being put forward by people who are against immigration. And, I won't lie that I think some of the anti-Muslim sentiments are coming probably from a wrong place. I don't. Do you know what heuristics are? I recently learned that word. It's basically, my understanding is an idea of sort of forming some principle, forming some concept with some pragmatic way where you don't really have like a fundamental principle of understanding why something is wrong. You just, something bad happened to you, and so you cut off that experience. So it might be like a cat touches a hot stove, and it won't touch the hot stove again.
Well, there, I think heuristic means a methodological approach of
Yeah,
some kind. So,
yeah. And so the idea there is that, if a cat touches the hot stove, that it like won't touch it again, but also it won't touch any cold stove because it has a problem with old stoves. And this is like I think a certain problem with people who have like anti-immigration sentiments around Muslim people is when in reality it's like against brown people, right? So you might get some good like results. Like yesterday we discussed the Imam getting out of Italy for celebrating October 7. So that will be an example of, yeah, probably such a person of Muslim faith shouldn't be allowed to come in Europe. But on the other side, we had, of course, and I think it was you, James, who discussed the guy with Razi, who says Razi should be deported from the UK. So,
okay.
but yeah, when it comes to, the way he talks about like peace and respect for other religions, again, we probably cannot expect like a rational policy from the Pope. especially when it comes to religion. But this is something important to remember, right? Religions are not fit for Western civilization. The more religious you are, the more at fault or at war you are with the way Western civilization works. I mean, look at the type of government the Vatican City is like doing. That's not what you would consider like a Western type liberal democracy. That's closer to Saudi Arabian type of dictatorship. It's just, it's small, so it cannot, and it doesn't really have any citizens, so it cannot really affect it. But I mean, James, when he talks about sort of like people who shouldn't have fear, I think he is doing what everybody has been doing with the term Islamophobia, right? It's like trying to portray that if you have a problem with Islam, you're just racist who has a problem with brown people. Yeah,
Right.
you're big. But in
Right.
reality, we are seeing an increased amount of Islamic violence. And what I think is the biggest problem is a lack of, I think, condemnation from a lot of Muslims for this violence. But
That,
what are your thoughts on
yeah,
this
well,
point?
that's the significant problem. See, the Enlightenment is what bothers the Catholic Church, not Islam, not Islamism, not jihadism, not Islamic terrorism, not the theocratic oppression. I mean, the Catholic Church is perfectly okay with countries like Iran or Saudi Arabia. That's not the theoretical problem for them. The theoretical problem for them is enlightenment, is liberalism. See, Christianity in Europe was defanged, fortunately, about 300 years ago. And it's funny. It's when the tortures and the burning at the stake of other Christian heretics came to an end. That's when it really began. The Catholic Church officially opposed America as such. America starts out no established religion whatever, free exercise of religion for everybody. That's what sticks in the Catholic Church's craw. So rather than show America as the example of how people can, in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multiracial way, get along, perhaps not perfectly over the last 200 years, but get along, Lebanon is much more an ideal for him. Where you kind of have to be a part of a religious group to get real political representation in your country. That's not a secular pluralist country in Lebanon, but I think maybe we're going to have a clip of him saying, no, Lebanon is in effect the model for a multi-religious state. No, there is such a thing as religious bigotry, and we can see it. If I hate you simply because of your ancestry or because of your belief in such a way that I'm the one imposing force upon you, I'm the wrong one. However, an ideology that advocates, and if you have an ideology of any kind that advocates violence, it's a problem. The ideology itself is a problem insofar as it permits you to go beat up some other religious group, right? And what made a religion safer, tamed religion in the West, was enlightenment, secularism, saying no, just because someone has a different religious belief or comes from a different group, you don't attack them. That is a form of bigotry. It is not a form of bigotry to identify that an ideology is causing violence and tyranny. That is the distinction that can't be made by the Pope, you see, because then he would have to align himself with reason and civilization, right? Freedom of religion, a secular state. That's what really sticks in their craw. Besides, with the rising tide of secularism since the Enlightenment, I mean, in America, we were just discussing before we went on air here, in America, you add the entire percentage of Jewish population with the entire percentage of the Islamic population, you still haven't reached the percentage of the population that identify as atheist. If we add agnostic, that doubles the percentage of population. Okay, secularism is what the Pope really doesn't like. That's what really bothers them, you see. But since there's this rising tide of secularism, though there's an increasing religious solidarity. That is to say, Christians are putting aside, they're becoming more ecumenical, I think is the term. They're putting aside their differences. And so while during the Renaissance, the Protestants and Catholics were at each other's throats, torturing each other, burning each other at the stake. No, we have to put all that aside. The Queen of England and now the King of England, King of Great Britain, is meeting with the Pope. Okay, we know there's centuries of hostility. We got to put all that aside. Or with the Eastern Orthodox Church. Oh, no, we got to put all that aside. And now even with Muslims, Christians are, no, let's even put aside our differences so that we can have a religious solidarity against the rising evil in their mind of a secular culture, of a non-religious, pro-reason culture. That's the real enemy, and that's causing, to a certain degree, a kind of a religious solidarity movement, if you will. And the Pope is leading the parade on that.
We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. And yeah, you know, it's hard to find like a representative of Christianity. We don't really have that. I mean, of course, Pope only represents. I mean, relatively. I'm not sure if is Catholicism the most prominent Christianity?
Catholicism is worldwide. Catholicism is the biggest denomination of Christians, and Christians are the most numerous religion in the world.
Yeah, so it still represents a large number. I mean, all of South America, you know, pretty much large parts of Eastern Europe, and across all of the world, large parts of Africa as well. So yeah, it's still a big part. And you have representative of this faith, like going out and saying, "Hey, you know what? Our religion is not like that unique. You know, if you want to do something else, you can do it. Tolerate other people." I mean, in a sense, if this was something similar on the Islamic side, if you had, and again, we don't really have like representative of of Islam either. I think you in like specific countries you might have like Ayatollah Khomeini might especially for Shiites might represent that. But imagine him like coming out and say, "Hey, you know what? Believe in what you want." No, this is not coming. And again, it cannot work. Not to mention, I mean, we talked about the Jewish population in Lebanon, right? Like he talks about. Well, we'll watch the clip in a second, then we can go into it. But
well,
Deborah,
for background, Lebanon has, you know, for the last 2,000 years had Christians there. The Maronite group are the largest group, but they do have Catholics, Orthodox Christians, and Christians represent at least 30% of the population of Lebanon. The Lebanese government, though, is set up in such a way that the president has to be from one religion, the prime minister has to be.
Yeah, let's cover that fully in a second because he'll talk about it. But first, I wanted to read the chat from Deborah. She says, "The Pope is the last remaining Caesar, and Rome was just as conquest-driven and oppressive as Islam. Not surprising the Pope would align with similar times." I disagree with both of them. I don't think even at the end of the Roman Empire it was barely as oppressive as any sort of Islamic state has ever been. But James, any?
At the end of the Western Roman Empire, there was all kinds of religious oppression. They were stamping out. They were starting to stamp out heretical groups. Now, they couldn't stamp out Arianism all at once. It took them a couple of centuries to do that. But, you know, just ask the Cathars of France whether they had religion. No. Christian Europe, for the first 1,000 years of Christian Europe, was pretty viciously intolerant, just like Islam is today. They're happy to use torture. I mean, with small sectarian differences among Christians. If you were a heretical Christian who interpreted the New Testament in a slightly different way, you would be tortured and burned at the stake. A very Islamic kind of approach to religious tolerance or intolerance. In many ways, look at the way Charlemagne Christianized the Saxons of Germany at the point of a sword, and it cost many, many lives. So they were. What about the Crusades? Someone might say, yeah, right. The Holy Land falls, you know, to the Muslims, and you know, at the end of the 11th century, the Pope calls for the Catholics to retake the Holy Land. It had been, of course, part of the Byzantine Greek Christian Empire, but Western Catholics are now coming over to take over. That's what the Crusades were. All in favor of religious war, all in favor of religious intolerance in a violent way. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with Christianity at large. I just had a slight disagreement about comparing Rome to
Rome became
like caliphate.
Increasingly less religiously tolerant, and by the time the Christians really take over, the clamps are heading down, and people are getting executed for being heretics, pagans, you name it. Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the second clip.
And in that sense, I would say that we all need to work together. One of the values of this trip is precisely to raise the world's attention to the possibility that dialogue and friendship between Muslims and Christians is possible. I think one of the great lessons that Lebanon can teach to the world is precisely showing a land where Islam, Christianity are both present and are respected, and that there is a possibility to live together, to be friends. Stories, testimony, witnesses that we heard even in the past 2 days of people helping each other, Christians with Muslims, both of whom had their villages destroyed, for example, of saying we can come together and work together. I think those are lessons that would be important also to be heard in Europe or North America, that we should perhaps be a little less fearful and look for ways of promoting authentic dialogue and respect.
Okay.
So yeah, again, using Lebanon as an example, Lebanon is one, when you look at I research like the political system of Lebanon, it's the most like, I don't know what you would call it, not sectarian, because that's like religious violence, but like tribalistic of like, oh, this neighborhood is of this religion and these seats are for this religion and this highest position is for this religion, this second highest is for this religion. It's like and of course, not to mention you have a Shiite terrorist organization controlling everything south of the Litani River. I mean, you like, my reaction would have been something like, "Have you even been to Lebanon?" When you say something like that, but like, it's just there, so there's no excuse.
No excuse. That's the part of His Holiness's statement that I want to really take issue with. Is Lebanon as a model? Let's see. For the last decades, Hezbollah has been running a violent, religious, fanatical group that wants to destroy Israel in Lebanon, sort of a government within a government. So,
yeah, and just a heads up to explain people what Hezbollah is. The affiliation of Hezbollah first goes to Ayatollah Khomeini and then goes to Allah. That's the leader of Hezbollah in its like structure is Allah. That's how like religious this organization is.
yes. And so a country that has harbored Hezbollah, tolerated Hezbollah, allowed Hezbollah military activity to be going on in their country is the model for how Muslims and Christians can get along. No, it sort of, there is no, there are technically like the Ba'ath secular party, very small, but there really is no secular representation. You have to be, in effect, a Christian or a Muslim of some kind before you can even have the top offices in the government. And they're allocated by religion. That is not a model for how a secular government should operate, because that's actually the term, the concept that frightens the Pope the most, a secular government. And for him to say that it's a model, okay, Christians and Muslims have not always gotten along in Lebanon. It's not even a historical reality. Oftentimes they're at each other's throats. And he seems to be perfectly unaware of the Lebanese civil war that began in the 1970s, which sort of installed Hezbollah as a permanent feature of the Lebanese society, a viciously intolerant group, a group of religious bigots that have been allowed to operate there, do their violence there. And for him, that this is, what pluralism and liberalism looks like, and what the model for all of us. No, and here you can hear it. It's really ironic. What's really paradoxical, you can hear his accent. He's not just speaking English, he's speaking English with a American Midwestern accent. He's an American Pope who, rather than saying, my country has religious freedom and we have no established religion and anybody can believe what they want. No, that's not the model for the Pope. The Catholic Church has been effectively hostile to Americanism since the outset. And for them, a much better model would be a country that, puts up with and allows Hezbollah to operate within its borders. That's much more the model that he would go for. Because it's really not religious fanaticism that he opposes, or even religious violence that he opposes. It's secularism that he opposes. Now, I myself am what you might call a liberal when it comes to immigration. But when it comes to immigration, the Pope is an altruist. The nations, if it causes you problems, if there's a population that comes in and they're violent or, they're causing you problems, that's not the issue. You've got to suck it up, be like an altruist. And so his pro-immigration stand is really a stand that makes every country have to sacrifice no matter what, even if it's a violent threat. No, he doesn't know that faith and force go hand in hand. Reason and freedom go hand in hand, as Ayn Rand pointed out in a brilliant essay that's, more than 60 years old now, Faith and Force, Destroyers of the Modern World. And you can really hear the subtext of that in what the Pope is saying. If violent thugs who are religiously motivated migrate to your country, suck it up.
Bonnie says, it's so strange to hear an, quote, American Pope after being raised Catholic. He sounds too much like the average person, which is not the church's position. Good to see it is on its way out. I mean, I don't know, the way he talked, he seemed to like talk weirdly, like he almost like forgot English, but I don't know if that was the accent, because I feel like I've heard people from Midwest before and it doesn't sound like that, but maybe he
This
was
kind
an
of
American.
sound, it's sort of what I hear is a standard American Midwest accent.
Yeah, maybe it's just me. But yeah, I mean the whole even when the Pope I mean something we haven't mentioned is of course the Jewish population in Lebanon. Now the
Oh.
reason why we haven't mentioned it is because there's like 5 of them there left.
Well, no, I think it's under 100, though. It's really just a few dozen Jewish people at all in Lebanon. And they face all kinds of discrimination. I mean, they're even included, and it's dangerous to be Jewish in Lebanon. And of course, a anti-Semitic fanatical group called Hezbollah that wants the complete destruction of Israel and would be happy to see every Jew on the planet die is allowed to operate there, just fine. They can have a little government within a government. For the Pope, that's a model for how governments, of multi-religious, multi-ethnic countries should operate.
Yeah, and again, he didn't say anything about it. And you might say, well, maybe Pope doesn't talk about this, but he talked about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He said there should be a ceasefire. He talks about how, there should be a two-state solution. So apparently he's quick enough to. And by the way, when you were starting about there's this anti-Semitic organization, I thought you were talking about Catholic Church, but then you talked about Hezbollah.
Well, the Catholic Church has long been an only within my lifetime has the Catholic Church forgiven the Jews collectively for killing Jesus.
Well,
Only within my lifetime has the Catholic Church officially forgiven the Jews.
Not lifetime, but wasn't it like 2 popes ago?
Oh, it was the night. Well, it began in the 1960s. They began changing their position. So when I was a small child, Vatican II. Just a little kid. I'm not that old, but you have to go back to the 1960s in Vatican II, back when I was a baby and a small child, to find the church actually beginning to recorrect its course on anti-Semitism. The church is still viciously anti-Semitic, as you can hear from the Pope. But think about it. Their religion says martyrs are the top, some of our top saints. Blessed are you when you're persecuted, said Jesus. So martyrdom is a really cool thing. If you suffer here on earth, read the New Testament, ladies and gentlemen. The Catholics don't really. Protestants are more on read your own Bible. Catholics will say, we'll tell you what it means. But if you read the New Testament, ladies and gentlemen, you will get the idea that it's wonderful to be poor, wonderful to suffer. Blessed are the poor, blessed are those who are persecuted. Suck it up, suffer. It's a cool thing to suffer here on earth. That'll get you brownie points for the next dimension. Getting into the kingdom of the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And that's why if you're miserable, suffering, get executed here on earth or persecuted, you are in the lucky group. Even if you're a slave, said St. Paul's letters, said, if you've got a harsh slave master, that's a great salvation opportunity. The more you suffer here on earth, the more credit you'll get on the other side. So one should distrust the Catholic Church when they come in, because the way they view something like October 7th is what great fortune the Israelis had that they were tortured, raped, mutilated, taken hostage. That's just a wonderful thing, a wonderful opportunity for Israelis. So if your official theoretical position from the Catholic Church's perspective is, oh, how fortunate Israelis were on October 7th to be martyred tortured and persecuted like that, that is their attitude towards martyrdom and persecution. So for them, it's, of course, ceasefire now. In fact, why don't we keep Hamas there, and you'll have all kinds of more martyrdom opportunities. They are life haters. The essence of Christianity, the essence of Catholicism, is the hatred of life on earth. You don't want to be rich. You don't want to be successful. You don't want to have sex. That's why they take through the Middle Ages, why Christian clerics took vows of celibacy and poverty. They are opposed to success and happiness here on the planet Earth. And so from that perspective, that should color everything we hear from this guy about things like October 7th. And of course, bear in mind their vicious and violent anti-Semitism. I mean, it's an interesting thing because when you had medieval violence, the mob violence, they do a passion play performance, and the local Christians would go after the local Jews, beat them up and kill them. And the Catholic Church, ironically, had to come in sometimes and say, "Cool it, don't kill don't be quite so horrible.
Leave some for tomorrow."
Save some for tomorrow." Right? Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, my I don't know if favorite example of this is, but example from the First Crusade, where some Germans didn't want to go into Holy Land, so they said, "Hey, might as well, go kill some local Jews. We don't have to
Well, if you
walk all
can't
the
go
way."
all the way to the Holy Land, they don't have a lot of Muslims in Germany at the time, especially. So today they have a lot more Muslims in Germany, but at the time in Germany there weren't a lot of Muslims. So what do? You beat up the local Jewish population, even though the Jews weren't the ones who'd taken the Holy Land in the 11th century.
Well, with that, we have few minutes left, so we'll go in a brief to the reality show where we'll talk about how the Israeli partner, and for people on the podcast, I'm using quotes, in Gaza was shot dead. And when I say partner, I mean some family that just was anti-Hamas. So we'll talk about that on the reality show. There'll be a few more topics, so make sure to join that. James, any last thoughts from you? And where can people find you?
No, but here at the Ayn Rand Center UK is where you can usually find me. And as I always say, please consider becoming a member of the Ayn Rand Center UK. I'll take this today as an opportunity we had such a great conference, the Irreplaceable Spark Conference in October. What a fun time, and what an informative and inspiring time. Consider going to next year's Irreplaceable Spark Conference. It's going to be in Austin, Texas. And if it's half as fun as it was this year, and I think it's going to be twice as fun, but if it's half as fun as the one this year, it is well worth your time and money.
Yeah, absolutely. We have incredibly bigger amount of time to prepare this one, not to mention experience from the first one to make this one even better. People can go to objectivism.co.uk to get your tickets. The super early bird pricing ran out a few days ago, but we still have early bird pricing that's going to be up for a few more months. But if you already want to secure your tickets now is a good time. With that, thank you, James, for joining me. We'll go to a reality show in just a few minutes, so join us there. Link is in the chat. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Be safe.